Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to rise virtually in this place to raise issues that I originally put forward in a question to the and responded to by the same parliamentary secretary on the subject of the Baffinland Mine in Nunavut. I want to start by thanking the Honourable Member of Parliament from Nunavut for her leadership and guidance on this issue. I reflect as I look on issues relating to the Arctic, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, the Yukon, how out of it really Southern Canadians are, how easy it is to ignore the issues, and particularly the leadership of the Inuit on issues in Nunavut. Canadians probably know more about the Amazon than we know about the Arctic. And it's ironic that the people of Brazil, the concentrated urban populations of Brazil, say in Rio de Janeiro, are as far from the Amazon and as unlikely to ever visit it as Canadians are in Toronto from Nunavut. In both cases, it's a 3,000 kilometer distance, but I think Canadians are unaware of how critical our Arctic is to our global climate system in the same way the Amazon, the Arctic are both major global influencers on climate at the same time that they are major victims of the climate crisis. Now, the context in which I asked the question about the Baffinland mine is this. It is a mine that has been operating, sending iron ore to Europe. It ships it out from Milne Inlet port. It's also owned, it's called a Canadian mining company if you look it up online, but it's owned by a European company based in Luxembourg, ArcelorMittal, and by a Houston, Texas-based company. It's now applying to double production to 12 million tons a year, build a 110-kilometer railway from the mine site to the port site, major expansion. Now, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, when she answered my question, seemed to think I was asking for prejudging the decision of the Nunavut Impact Review Board. I wasn't. I was pointing out in my question that satellite imagery plus eyewitness accounts from Inuit hunters on the ground see that the company has already started expansion before it receives a permit, which raises really large issues. This is quite typical of projects right across Canada. Who is watching to make sure that conditions attached to permits are actually observed? What do Inuit hunters in particular do when they think a large transnational corporation is deciding to jump the gun, not wait to see if their project actually gets approved? We know from CBC News that in 2017, the Baffinland Mine already signed contracts with contractors to assist in the building of the railway, not waiting for approvals. Iron ore mining company has already influenced and unfortunately contaminated food supply from Arctic char through the food chain. There are deep concerns. As a matter of fact, that's how I first learned about this project, was a brave blockade in midwinter, land of no sun whatsoever and deep frigid temperatures. February 2021, the blockade by Inuit hunters from Pond Inlet and Arctic Bay is what made me wonder what on earth is going on that people be so brave as to sit down and block the Mary River airstrip as a protest against what they saw happening in terms of the contamination and with the increased shipping that's threatened by phase 2 of this project, what it would mean for the narwhal. When you look at, though, the more I ask about this, the more I'm concerned, deeply concerned, that the Inuit leadership is...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank my honourable colleague from Saanich Gulf Islands for raising the issue. And I want to say from the onset, I understand her question completely, but I also know that she understands there is a process. And during that process, that the government is taking with Baffinland, she knows that we should not be interfering politically. So I want to be clear from the outset that our government supports a strong resource development sector in the North and one that is sustainable, that creates opportunities for Indigenous and all Northerners, but respects the environment and respects the interests of the people who live there. And I want to assure you, Madam Speaker, from the onset, that the review of this proposed development has been led by Northerners from day one. It has followed the environmental review process that have been outlined in the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, and this process is guided by the Nunavut Planning and Project Assessment Act. Through this process, the Nunavut Impact Review Board, or NIRB, has been ensuring that Inuit and other Indigenous partners have been consulted. The NIRB has also worked very hard to balance public health during COVID-19 and other issues throughout the review, while also ensuring that the Inuit voices have been heard. And as part of the review process, members of potentially impacted communities in the Baffin region, some of whom I have talked to myself, have had the opportunity to make their views known. So public hearings that have been held by NIRB began in November of 2019. The process had been ongoing since that time. And while the pandemic delayed the process and some meetings had to be rescheduled, the NIRB completed their hearings in January of this year. And the board is now preparing its final recommendations, which will be presented to the minister and the department very shortly. Throughout that whole process, however, residents have been able to both learn about the proposed project, give their feedback and input into the project, and NIRB has gone to great lengths to ensure that Nunavut have had the chance to participate in or watch the proceedings. In addition to that, many federal officials have participated in every step of the review, including the final public hearings and the community roundtable, which was completed last fall. So I want to say to the members that once the NIRB report is presented to government and the final report's recommendations, the responsible ministers will then take the decisions that they are requested to take using due diligence and a very comprehensive decision framework. The member knows that the process is very clear, it is very defined, and it is very transparent. We will not prejudge the outcome or the process, and we look forward to receiving the board's report. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Saanich Gulf Highlands.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And to my honorable friend, the parliamentary secretary, I'm not asking about prejudging the process. I'm asking, is anyone going to hold this foreign multinational to account for proceeding to begin building a project before it has a permit? That's illegal. Someone should step up. And the double standard here is one that really worries me and bothers me. Do you think an Indigenous person, an Inuit person, under court orders in a criminal justice proceeding, could avoid the restrictions in the way that a foreign corporation can avoid restrictions on their activities until they have a permit? This is a double standard, and it should bother the parliamentary secretary as much as it bothers me. What is available to hold Baffinland to account for building and contracting for a second phase and even thinking about a third phase when it doesn't have a permit?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the member knows that this is an active mine. It is an ongoing mine. If she has particular information that should be provided to the minister, to the government, if Inuit in that area have particular concerns and documentation of something that is being done outside of the process, then they should make us aware of that. What I do know at this stage is that it is ongoing process with NIRB. They have made an application. They're following the regulations. Government is being responsible in the work that we do in allowing a fair, open, and transparent process for that application. And until the recommendations are presented to the ministers, the appropriate ministers, no decision will be made with regard to the future expansion of the mine.